This episode of the Carolina Sports Guy, I'm going to send it back a little bit, and we're going to be talking about college sports in Carolinas. Specifically today, we're going to focus on Wake Forest University. Yes, the Demon Deacons. YouTube friends and family, it's another episode of the Carolina Sports Guy. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. Doesn't cost anything. I'd greatly appreciate it. Help a brother out. Uncle Chucky would definitely approve. Hit the like button. Pound it. Let me know that you like content like this. Be covering Carolina Panthers, Carolina Hurricanes, Charlotte Hornets, and college sports in the Carolinas. Hit the bell notification. Be notified for future content anytime I put out another video. And leave some comments below. Tell me what you like in today's video. Tell me what you didn't, what you'd like to see in future episodes of the Carolina Sports Guy. All right, folks, decided to look at colleges, and I will be covering from Davidson to UNC Chapel Hill to South Carolina to, Clemson, UNC Charlotte, Appalachian State, everybody. I'll be talking about the major universities in North and South Carolina. I thought I'd just start, if I'm going to just put a focus on one, and it might not be the last one I do for Wake Forest, but I just kind of wanted to go in detail. I put out another video about their major colleges and universities, sports teams in the Carolinas, and Wake Forest was mentioned in that video with 10 other schools. But I just kind of wanted to throw out a little bit of tidbits for you today, talking about Wake Forest. It was a school that was formed by the Baptists in 1834 in the small town of Wake Forest in Wake County, which is just north of Raleigh. It was known as Wake Forest College from 1839 to 1967 because it was a small school. It was a theological school. The Baptists saw this as a chance for young poor men to get an education and to basically go out in the world and teach the good word, the good news, Christianity with Baptist influence. Now, way back in 1834, when the university was originally founded, it was known as the Wake Forest Manual Labor Institute. Guys had to go there and work hard, and it was almost like a prison. But yeah, they instituted hard work and labor, and then they changed the name to Wake Forest College in 1839. Now, 1956, the family of R.J. Reynolds, big tobacco company, they had a lot of land and they donated, and they got Wake Forest to move their college to Winston-Salem, which is basically, I want to say, maybe an hour to an hour and a half down the road. And the textile industry and a bigger city and bigger town. And Wake Forest, I believe, at one time was like the third largest city in the state. Now I believe they're probably about the fifth. But needless to say, they were, R.J. Reynolds' family paid them a good sum of money, donated some land, and they moved in 1956. Now, Wake Forest started in the Southern Conference. They were independent from the 1800s, 1830s, all the way to 1936. And then they joined the Southern Conference in 1936. I mean, you had Tennessee and Mississippi and Alabama. Got a lot of schools that were in the Southern Conference: North Carolina, Virginia, VMI, Duke, which used to be known as Trinity College. But from 1936 to 1953, they were a member of the Southern Conference. And of course, 1953 comes, Wake Forest, along with UNC and NC State, South Carolina, Clemson, Duke, and Maryland left and formed the Atlantic Coast Conference. And about 6 months later, University of Virginia became the 8th institution to do so. Now, famous alum from Wake Forest, in case you didn't know it, golf is very big at the Winston-Salem campus. Arnold Palmer is a graduate of Wake Forest University. So they kind of put golf on the map in the Carolinas. Tobacco Road, when we started looking at Tobacco Road, because North Carolina and Virginia are famous for tobacco, particularly North Carolina, they had the Big Four. They used to play in the Dixie Classic, which was North Carolina, Duke, NC State, and Wake Forest. And of course, Duke and Chapel Hill, Duke and Durham, and North Carolina and Chapel Hill, those two schools were 8 miles apart, so there's a big rivalry there. Of course, North Carolina and NC State have been big rivals because of being public schools. Being Wake Forest was a private school, a Baptist school, where Duke was a Quaker / Methodist school, private school, you would think there'd been more of a rivalry with Duke. But Wake Forest, starting out being in the same county as NC State and Raleigh, Wake Forest and NC State did develop a rivalry. Okay. Now, originally Wake Forest was known as the Old Gold and Black, or the Baptist. And it wasn't until 1923 when Wake Forest College had a win over Trinity College, which will later become known as Duke, that a newspaper editor, or reporter, he wrote that the deacons, which what you normally call people in a Baptist church, the men who are involved in the church board, the deacons fought like demons. So therefore they became known as the Demon Deacons at that point in time. Now, like I said, this school is mainly known for basketball. And in 1962, they reached their only Final Four. Billy Packer, who was a commentator for ACC, and I think his son is, I think it's Mark Packer, but he's on the ACC network. And they lost to Ohio State in the Final Four. But they beat UCLA in the consolation game. But they were led by Lynn Chappell. And the thing about Lynn Chappell, he was a 1962 ACC Male Athlete of the Year, so that's pretty big for Wake Forest. And, that wasn't the first one. They had a guy named Dickie Henrick. 1955 was also Wake Forest, a Male Athlete of the Year. And the Wake Forest Demon Deacons have been to the NCAA tournament 20 times, but only made the Final Four the once in 62. Had several teams, especially looking at the Tim Duncan years and Randolph Childress. But there's one year that they were upset, I believe, by Utah. No, it was Oklahoma State and Big Country Reeds, and they probably should have made the Final Four that year. They were number one in the country, and of course they didn't. Now, as far as ACC basketball tournaments, Wake Forest have won the tournament in 61 and 62. Those were some very good years, a Final Four year in 1995-96. And that's when you're looking at the Randolph Childress, and Tim Duncan kind of followed that after that year. In 1995, since I brought up Randolph Childress, he was the ACC Male Athlete of the Year. And then, of course, 1997, Tim Duncan followed as he's the ACC Male Athlete of the Year. I was really surprised Chris Paul did not get named Male Athlete of the Year, being he played at Wake Forest. But he had to really compete against some very good Duke teams and some very, very strong North Carolina teams over those years. Okay, looking at football. 2006, Wake Forest cracked the top 25. They've been there before, but a small private school. In fact, I believe other than the service academies, I have Army, Air Force, and Navy, and Tulsa and Rice. They are the smallest enrollment of a school in NCAA sports. Now, the difference is Army, Navy, and Air Force play in the, I guess Navy plays in the American Athletic, and Army's independent, and Air Force is in the Mountain West. Tulsa's in the American Athletic with Navy, and then of course Rice is in Conference USA. But Wake Forest is definitely the smallest school that's in the Power 5, which is the Southeastern Conference, the ACC, the Big 10, the Big 12, and the Pac-12. The smallest school. Very tough school to get into. Now, in 2006, when they won that, they ended up winning the ACC Atlantic Division of football. They won the ACC Championship game in Charlotte. They beat Georgia Tech 9-6. They finished 11-2 that year. They ended up losing the Orange Bowl to Louisville. But it is definitely the smallest school that ever competed in the Orange Bowl. And their head coach, Jim Grove, man, he had them playing well. He's a great coach, a great recruiter. And you've had some great players over the years like Ricky Prohl, who's played football. Of course, basketball, like I said, Tim Duncan, Rodney Rogers, Randolph Childress, Jeff Teague, Muggsy Bogues, Lynn Chappell, like I said, Billy Packer, Frank Johnson. Some of y'all don't remember him from the mid-'80s. But anyway, early 80s, I guess I should say. Now, Wake Forest has won bowl games. They are 9-6 in bowl games. And one of the last bowl games they won is when they defeated UConn in a bowl game in Charlotte at the Meineke Car Care Bowl. Okay, as far as ACC Championship games, okay, they did win in 2006, where they won the Atlantic Division and went on to beat Georgia Tech, who was in the Coastal Division, 9-6 to win that. That was the second ever ACC Championship win. Their first came in 1970. In 1970, you're looking at 8 schools, and that's when South Carolina was still in the ACC, and Clemson, Maryland, Virginia, and then the other 3 schools in Carolina, State, Duke, and UNC. Wake Forest also won a 1955 national championship in college baseball. Women's lacrosse has won a few championships. And the soccer team, the men's soccer team, they won the 2007 championship over Ohio State. So this is just a brief look at Wake Forest University, the Demon Deacons. Always loved their uniform. I loved their logo, loved the school colors. And I would really say, I'm a graduate of East Carolina, proud of my school. Was a big Tar Heel fan growing up in basketball because of Dean Smith. I would have loved to have graduated from that school. I didn't ever apply. And, of course, I didn't really have the grades to get into Wake Forest. But if someone was paying for my education today and said, what school would you go to? I always have a soft spot in my heart for Wake Forest, and that would probably be the school I would choose. But anyway, what do you think of the content in today's video? What other schools would you like to see me do that are in the state of North or South Carolina? Pound that like button. Hit the bell notification to be notified of more content like this. Subscribe, folks. Doesn't cost anything. Help a brother out. And this is Uncle Chucky. And we'll see you next time on the Carolina Sports.